Welcome to Literary AF Podcast.
Hello, it's me. Back with another Adele reference from 3 years ago. Or 4 years.
At least 4.
A long time ago.
Yeah,
Welcome to Literary AF Podcast. My name is Sheldon.
I'm Danni.
And we're here today to talk to you about a little something I like to call a book.
Yes.
What are we reading today, Danni?
Today I'm going to be talking about Lothaire.
Ooh, who's it by?
It is by Kresley Cole.
Ooh, what's it a part of?
It is it is the 11th book in the Immortals After Dark series.
Oh, chill.
Yeah.
Wait, did we talk about book 10?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, because book 8 is a novella that I skipped.
Oh, because I was thinking, I'm like, we did 6 books and then 3 books.
Yeah.
And now we're on 11.
Technically, Lothaire's book 11, because I skipped book 8, because it was a novella inside of a anthology.
Hear that? What's it, Kresley Cole?
Kresley Cole.
Hear that, Kresley Cole? Owned. We skipped one of your novellas.
I'm gonna go back to it eventually. I was just... Amazon is a pain when it comes to buying used books. Okay. And I find, like, at least half the time, they just don't come at all. It's really,
Yeah.
It sucks. Because I just had to get a refund on a different order of books, like last week, because they never showed up.
Ooh.
So...
I recently ordered a microphone off Amazon. I don't know if you guys can tell the difference. If I sound, like, sexier than normal. And also new boxers off Amazon. And they came in the same box, which was a little weird. Because you think, what kind of place ships clothing and microphones?
Well, if it's coming from an Amazon warehouse, they just stuff everything into the same box.
I know, it was just weird.
I keep buying from, like, third-party Amazon sellers. So yeah. That's my problem.
That's been my experience, is mostly with third-party. So to get something, like, both from the Amazon warehouse was weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to talk about the Amazon warehouse. That's on our other podcast, Amazon Warecast. That was a bad title. I immediately regret it.
We can work on it.
Editing Sheldon, cut that out. Put something in that makes me sound cooler. But Danni, let's go to Lothaire.
Okay. So, if you might remember from the previous books, there was a whole situation where there was an island where the immortals were being kidnapped and taken to, and they were being, like, tortured and stuff like that.
Yes, vaguely. Can you do, like, a, like, super quick, like, rundown on, like, the series so far, or, like, just to, like, refresh?
Okay.
Because it's been a while since we've talked about this.
It has been a little while. So there's a bunch of immortal races.
Yeah.
There's the Lycae, which are the werewolves, vampires, there's Valkyries. Witches, sorceress,
dolphins.
Demons. Did you just say dolphins?
I did. Technically dolphins exist.
They do exist because it's a modern day setting. There are dolphins.
Wait, are you implying that dolphins didn't exist in the past?
I don't know, man. I don't know. Dolphins are their own thing.
Keep going.
And in the last couple books, there's been... Because I noticed that they kind of do story arcs, where there's like a book or two that's building up to a big event, and then that big event happens, and then it builds up to another bigger event. And the last big event was basically like a bunch of the immortals in the world were getting kidnapped and taken to this island where they're being tortured by just regular humans who are trying to figure out, like, their abilities and their weaknesses and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, I've always wondered, like, with this series, because I haven't read them, I've just heard what you said.
Yeah.
Like, how humans fit into the overall, like...
Humans universe. They are there, but, like, one of the rules in the lore, which is this community of immortal beings, one of the rules is that they kind of try to keep their presence a secret from humans.
Okay.
And there's some books where, like, a vampire will find out a human is his mate, and they have to obviously bring her into the whole immortals thing, but they try to keep that, like, separate.
Okay.
So there's this torture island, and all of the big names have been there. The last, like, 3 books have been set on this island, basically.
Oh, okay.
And Lothaire is one of the guys who's stuck on the island. And the book starts just after he gets off the island. In the last book, there was an encounter with a evil sorceress named Lothaire, who has like a magical ring. And the only bits you saw of Lothaire were he stole this ring in one book, and then she spent the other book chasing him down. Lothaire has been a recurring character in all of the previous books, basically.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He kind of has this reputation as a bad guy. He's on the evil side of the war. He's extremely manipulative. The older a character is, the stronger they are. And Lothaire is like 4,000 years old. And he is one of the like most feared, strongest evil characters that have been in the books so far. So, forget where I was going with this. You just kind of catch glimpses of him in other books through other people's point of views.
Okay.
So it was really exciting to find out that he had his own book, which would be his own point of view.
Yeah.
And the first thing you kind of realize when you start reading about Lothaire in his book is that he's a bit of a loser.
Oh, no.
He is a 4,000-year-old vampire. And
he still lives in his mother vampire's basement?
No, his mother vampire is dead, unfortunately.
Oh.
But he dresses like a mid-aughts goth kid, basically.
Ooh, love it.
He wears a black leather trench coat. He wears black t-shirts. He wears black jeans. He wears sunglasses.
Wait, so a 4,000-year-old vampire who dresses like a Columbine shooter?
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. So that's like your first impression of Lothaire is just, this is the big bad guy that you've been reading about.
From The Matrix.
Yeah, basically. The big bad guy you've been reading about for the last 10 books dresses like an early aughts goth kid.
I love it. I wonder if he was like a 90s computer hacker.
He dresses the part to be, for sure. And so...
Wait, is it presented as like kind of lame, or does the author like clearly think it's cool?
I think Kresley Cole just might think it's cool. Because this is a recurring theme with some of the other characters, is like leather coats and leather pants and stuff like that.
Love it.
But Lothaire has just been like the most over the top out of all of them. And I think that might be like accented by the fact that he's been built up as like this big baddie super evil guy. Yeah. And then he just kind of is a bit of a dork, actually.
I love it.
So the book opens, you meet a human female named Ellie Pierce. And she has been possessed by a vampire goddess of murder.
Oh.
And the book actually opens with like...
Vampire Goddess of Murder is like a pretty chill name for like a goth band, actually.
Vampire, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, keep going. I just wanted to make that clear. Dibs on that for my band name.
There you go. Like her opening chapter is she comes to, because she basically loses consciousness whenever this goddess takes over her body.
Okay.
She comes to, and there's like a room of dead priests who had tried to exorcise her.
Oh, okay.
And like the cops are just pulling up, and now she's in trouble, and she basically gets arrested.
Ooh.
And let's see if I can... I'm not gonna dig for quotes for too long, but the cops show up, and she's like, I hate this. I know I'm being possessed by a demon. She just assumes it's a demon. She doesn't actually know what is possessing her at this point, but she thinks her only out is to basically go out in front of the cops. Suicide by cops, basically, is what she's trying to do. And when she goes out, of course, Lothaire shows up to stop her from killing herself, because Lothaire believes that the vampire goddess that's inside her is his bride. Because we mentioned before, vampires all have their specific brides. They only have one mate, basically, and when they see them or smell them or whatever, they know that this is their one person. And when Lothaire first encountered Ellie, like 2 years ago, he had that awakening, and Lothaire believes that he is too good to have a human mate. Ooh. So it definitely is the vampire goddess that is possessing this human that is his mate, which I thought was actually really funny. There's a quote I think I saved later about how it's just, of course the vampire goddess is my mate because I'm way better than ever having a human mate kind of thing, which you will find out later is not the case. He stops her from getting shot, and then he just disappears again. And she gets taken into protective custody, and she's put on death row for the next 5 years. And that's just kind of where she sits. For Lothaire goes to do something else and just leaves her in prison. And the day of her execution shows up, and Lothaire has like I forgot about her moment, and goes back to get her before she can get killed. Yeah. And then he kidnaps her, takes her back to his New York penthouse apartment, because of course he's got a New York penthouse apartment. And they argue a lot. She's mad at him for A, leaving her in prison, and B, just like straight up kidnapping her. Yeah. The goddess that lives inside of her is manipulating Lothaire into doing her bidding, because what their goal is to basically get Ellie's soul removed from her body so the goddess can take over completely. Okay. So the first half of this book is Lothaire just basically trying to do that.
Wait, sorry, what was he trying to do?
Trying to remove Ellie's soul from her body.
Oh, okay.
So that the goddess Soroya can basically take over completely.
Oh, okay. Good plan.
Yep. I really like Ellie as a character, because even though Lothaire is like a 4,000-year-old super strong vampire, she yells at him constantly.
Oh, perfect.
And she doesn't take any of his bullshit.
Yeah, I love characters like that.
I think the book couldn't have worked if she was any other way. Yeah. Because if she had been more meek, it would have been uncomfortable to have like such a dominant personality, like kidnapping and,
It becomes almost like a scary book, or like, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like a book about abuse. If it's a person who just like is quiet and takes it.
Yeah. Whereas she's like strong-willed and she stands up to him and he's like, "You're gonna do this," and she's like, "Actually, no, I'm not gonna do that." And I'm trying to find the quote. Lothaire is the first thing that caught me off guard about Lothaire was that he's extremely sassy, which I wasn't expecting that kind of attitude out of out of an old vampire goth. Yeah. But let's see. I'm trying to see. One of the first quotes that kind of made me laugh was Ellie calls him narcissistic, because he is. And his response was, "First of all, I'm not a narcissist." When she opened her lips to argue, he said, "I know Narcissus of Thespiae. Well, we might share the same traits. I came first, so he's Lothairistic, not the other way around." Which really set the tone for what a dork he is, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
I don't remember where I was. He kidnapped Ellie, and then he spends like half the book trying to figure out how to kill her, basically. Yeah. And she's trying to figure out how to get out of his apartment. She's trying to manipulate this old witch. She's not even an old witch, but she has the nickname Hag because she had been basically magicked to look like an old hag.
It's fun.
And Lothaire broke the curse, and he still continues to call her Hag, even though she's like a really pretty 20-something witch.
Love it.
So Ellie makes friends with Hag, whose name I cannot remember. And then there's this... The goddess basically tells Lothaire, "You need to figure this out in a month. I'm coming back in a month." And she better be out by then. So that's kind of like the timeline for the first half of the book. Meanwhile, Lothaire is like, he's the prince of two different vampire kingdoms, basically.
Okay.
There's three in total. There's the Forebearers, who are vampires that were human and have been turned.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of like the good vampire side.
Yeah.
There's the Horde, which are basically the evil vampires. And Lothaire is the, he's the rightful heir to the Horde throne, basically.
Okay.
And he is trying to get that crown back.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a third vampire family that's kind of like, they're only heard about in rumors. They're like myths and legends and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're a secret society of vampires called the Dacians.
Okay.
And Lothaire is also a part of that family. And I don't know if I talked about just how crazy Lothaire is. When a vampire drinks somebody to death, they basically take in all of their memories.
Oh, okay.
And Lothaire's been drinking people to death for 4,000 years.
Okay.
So he's really insane. He's like a mad king, basically.
Fine.
And it's gotten to the point where he's like, he traces in his sleep, so vampires can teleport.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll just teleport somewhere in his sleep. He could wake up anywhere, basically.
Okay.
And there's a scene where he wakes up in the snow, and he thinks that he senses the secret society of vampires around him,
mm-hmm.
and he just starts yelling and like fighting at air, and just in the middle of this snowy field.
Fun.
And it's a standard romance. I guess there's a lot of like back and forth. They bicker a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Ellie doesn't take any of his shit. She fights him. He yells at her. There's a point where Lothaire says that his plans are to find this ring. This mythical ring that lets the user grant wishes, but the more wishes that person asks for, like, the more likely it is for the wish to go bad.
Okay.
So the first couple wishes will be fine, and then they start getting, like, messed up and go wrong and stuff like that.
Okay.
And his plan is to find this ring and then wish Ellie's soul out of her body, basically.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And this ring was actually what he stole off of the sorceress from the last book, Lothaire, but it got stolen off of him when he ended up on Torture Island. So there's a chunk of this book where he's trying to track down where that ring went, because the human who took it has like a bunch of security measures and he's been impossible to track and stuff like that. But there's a point where he finally gets the ring back. And he uses it. He's trying to use it to go back in time to before he promised Soroya that he would help her. Because in the Immortals series, when an immortal makes a vow to the lore, they actually can't break that promise.
Okay.
So what Lothaire did was he vowed to the lore that he would kill Ellie and get Soroya in her body. But over the course of this book, Lothaire actually realized that his mate was Ellie, not this goddess. And this goddess is just manipulating him to get what she wants. And when he gets the ring, his first thing he's trying to do is to go back in time to before he made that promise, and then he can just try to do everything over again.
Oh, I see.
It doesn't work. It doesn't let him do it because he can't break a vow to the lore. And while he's trying to figure this out, the sorceress who's hunting for her ring actually shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And they have like a face-off encounter. And the sorceress actually ends up killing the vampire goddess.
Okay.
In a kind of anticlimactic exchange. It was a little bit disappointing, but Lothaire made a deal with her. The other thing I didn't mention was his deals. Lothaire has a reputation in all of the lore, and it's been building up through the last couple books, where he helps people out, but for a price. And he says, I'll help you out with this, but you owe me, and I'm coming back in the future. You owe me a blood debt. And he keeps all of these debts like recorded in a ledger. And I actually thought it was really funny. There's a point where he gets like really frustrated and he needs to feel better. So what he does is he goes and gets his ledger and just like reads through all of these debts he's collected because that makes him feel better. And he and the sorceress he gives her half of his debts and she lets him have the ring for a day to make all his wishes kind of thing.
Oh, I see.
And he turns Ellie into a vampire.
Ooh.
And the goddess that was in her body is killed. And then... Actually, he doesn't make any more wishes than that, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
Like, he has so many things that he wants to do, but those are the big ones. And he just kind of leaves it at those wishes. But because Lothaire is a bit of a dick, he and Ellie start, like, fighting almost immediately after he turns her into a vampire.
Love it. And
there's an encounter between them where she basically cuts off his head with a sword.
Okay.
And if an immortal's beheaded, they get killed permanently, but apparently she, like, just missed enough that it didn't take his whole head off, and he regenerates his head and comes back later. But they basically have this huge falling out where she goes to live with the Valkyries for a while.
Ooh.
And Lothaire, his Dacian cousins actually find him, and they're like, our throne is cursed. None of our families have been able to stay on the throne. We need you to come take over because it's rightfully your throne kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes to stay there, and they basically separate for a couple weeks. And Lothaire is upset about it, really upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this I have to read because this was like one of the highlights of my book. But Ellie is staying with the Valkyries and she receives a delivery from, it doesn't say from who, but, I mean, the guess is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And, let's see. Right. Ellie tore open the box, casting everyone an excited grin. Off the top went. Her fingers went limp. The package dropped to the floor, jostling its contents. A bloody black heart tumbled out. When it settled at her feet, she shoved her palm over to her mouth to keep from vomiting. Why would he do this? How? The crowd parted for the steely Kara. Nyx trailing in her wake. Read the note, vampire, Kara ordered. With shaking hands, Ellie collected the crisp parchment. Elizabeth, with my compliments. You'll never get your claws into another one of mine. Rot in hell. So, they have an argument, and his response is to just tear out his own heart and send it to her in a box that just says rot in hell.
So overdramatic. I love it.
So overdramatic. It's peak Lothaire. Like, this is just... That's basically how he is the entire book. It was really funny. I loved it a whole lot. And a couple pages later, Nyx shows up at Lothaire's castle.
Yeah.
And she has something in return for Lothaire. And Nyx says, I'm only a messenger from Elizabeth. You sent her your heart in a box and she responded. At once he traced to Nyx, snatching the package from her. As Lothaire lifted the lid with a sense of dread, Nyx murmured, Hint, it's the middle one. Elizabeth's fragile finger. Seeing it severed like this brought on a visceral reaction. So she cut off her middle finger and sent it back to him, which I feel like was the proper response for that kind of situation.
Yeah.
I thought that whole exchange summed them up really well,
mm-hmm.
and was like super funny at the time when I was reading it.
Yeah.
It's really on par for both of them. They do end up making up. I'm trying to remember how. Ellie returns to her home with her human family. She's actually like a mountain girl, basically. She's from the Appalachian Mountains, and she lives in like a trailer with her mom and her brothers kind of thing. So she's
like a
poor white trash
like
human
a legit
girl.
Hillbilly.
She's a legit hillbilly. And so that's she goes back to her parents' home, and they kind of accept her and bring her back in, which is, I guess, a recurring theme through the book.
Mm-hmm.
Lothaire's family rejected him both sides of the thrones have rejected him. His mother was killed, and he's been alone for 4,000 years. Whereas Ellie has like a super supportive, very welcoming family.
Yeah.
And Lothaire kind of can't understand why she cares about them so much. And he decides he wants to, I guess, fix things with her. So he realizes she's probably with her family. He goes to see her. He ends up saving her family members from a coal mine explosion because there's a coal mine on the mountain that they live on.
Sure.
And everything kind of works out for them. She goes to live with him in his big Dacian castle. They bring one of her bloodhounds with her.
Okay.
They go back to visit her family regularly, which I thought was cute. Yeah. It's let's see how big it is.
450 pages, I think. 445.
Nope. You're off by about 100 pages.
What?
558 pages.
The website I looked at was wrong.
Maybe that's Kindle pages versus this could be like a mass market version, and that could be like the hardcover version or something.
448 is what the website I was looking at said.
Well, my copy was like almost 560 pages. Regardless, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I would suggest maybe it's better if you have the knowledge from the books leading up to this book.
So don't just start at this one?
You could if you really wanted to. But I think like the impact of Lothaire finally getting his own story wouldn't mean as much.
It's
obviously.
better if you've read the whole series, except for number 8.
Except for the novellas. Because, Lothaire spent the last 10 books being built up as, like, this big, bad, evil guy. And then he's really not. He's a bit of a dork. A bit of a crazy dork.
What would you rate this book out of 10?
Of 10?
Yeah.
I'd give it a solid, 9 or 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really like this book. Lothaire's problematic because he's an asshole, of course. But, I can look past that just because it's a really fun time.
Okay.
And the last 10 books building up to this, it was a great payoff. I really, really enjoyed the story.
Yeah. All right, well, so Danny, where can people find us?
People can find us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Literary AF. I'm on Twitter, LiteraryAFPod. Our Gmail is literaryafpod@gmail.com. Instagram, LiteraryAFPod.
Is there any pictures on our Instagram?
Yes, there is. I post pictures of books.
I'm shaking my head.
Your head at me.
I'm shaking my head.
Is that everything we have to plug?
I think so.
I think I got Facebook, so we're good.
Tune in next week when we have a big surprise for you.
Big surprise?
It'll also be a big surprise for us.
Hopefully we figured it out by then.
Nope. It's going to be a surprise.
All right.
And thanks for listening. And I don't know how to end it, so bye.
Bye.